and happy 2026. It is the beginning of a new year, and as always, people are here to make lists, and I'm here to make my own list. The top 15 best manga I read in 2025, and as a little bonus, the bottom 5, the worst 5 manga I read in that year as well. Now, this is a list of manga that I finished reading in 2025. The manga where the last chapter, I've read the last chapter in 2025. It's not a list of best manga released or anything like that. So have that in mind. This is my third time recording this because the neighbors are doing renovations. Hopefully it will be the last recording I do. Let's just jump into the bottom 5. Starting with number 5, it is Crash Bandicoot. It's not the most exciting manga on the list. This is a 2-chapter adaptation of the original PS1 video game that came out, I think, in 1995 or 1996 or 1994. It was around that time, I forget. And yeah, I'm a huge Crash Bandicoot fan. It's the reason why my nickname is Crash. It comes from that video game, and because I love Crash Bandicoot so much, obviously had to read the manga adaptations. There's one adaptation that's been translated for a while, which is the adaptation of Crash Bandicoot 2, which I've read, I think, even before I made the channel. And now the first chapter of this manga has been translated for a long time, but either they translated the second and final chapter this year, or I found it this year, and by this year I mean 2025. So I give it a go, and it's kind of similar to the other adaptation where it's a Korokoro comic. It's a lot of jokes. Most of them are not funny at all. It's very loud, it's very kind of annoying. The characters don't really feel like they are the same characters personality wise as they are in the video game. They kind of just feel like they are physically, the same character, but that's all. Like, they grabbed the concept of Crash as main character in the design of Crash, and then they grabbed Neo Cortex as a villain, and they just kind of like made their own versions of the characters, which are made just to entertain, like 6-7-year-olds for 5 minutes, and it's not that good. It's not that memorable, even for fans of the manga. So it ranks here at bottom 5. Bottom 4, we got Itai Des, which translates to "it's painful," I'm pretty sure. And it is kind of a horror manga. I do like the concept of this manga, but I think in execution doesn't really work. The idea of Itai Des is that basically every chapter there's a level of pain associated to it, and every chapter that level of pain grows. So we start the manga with really short things that can cause you, a little bit of a pain, like stepping your toe and things like that, and it evolves into much more painful, much more cringe-inducing things, except it doesn't really evolve too much. I feel like the last couple of levels kind of all feel the same. As an execution, this is basically just a list of things that hurt you, and I like the idea of being things that happen to you, like getting a needle stuck, you getting pulling the little skin in the finger, just pulling too much, things like that, where it's pain that is realistic. And it's pain, especially in the lower levels, it's pain that you've likely experienced yourself, and so you can relate to, and you know exactly how it feels. And it's cringe-inducing. That's the point of this manga. It's for you to go like, ouch. That's all. That's the point of this manga. That it's to do that. But in execution, it's kind of just a list of things that hurt. It's not really a story. It doesn't evolve into outlandish or exciting things. And so it kind of just becomes a little bit boring. Like, again, I like the idea of it, but that's it. That's all I like about this. On number 3, we got Dios Vitae, or DV, depending on who you ask, I guess. Yeah, this one is just really boring. I may do a video kind of a little bit more about this manga and about One Piece. I'm not sure if that makes sense. It doesn't. I know it doesn't make sense, but if the video ever comes out, you'll see what I mean. Basically, this is about robots in the future that, you know, have evolved, and they killed all the humans, except not all the humans, as we later find out. And we followed one guy who's trying to destroy all robots, and that's it, kind of. Basically, the premise of the manga is mostly just the lore of it. It is one of those manga that like have like 5 pages at the beginning just telling you the story of it, and it's kind of like using mythology to tell the story. Like the robots, they have like the father, and they have the mothers and the descendants and things like that. And our main character is the son of the original creator of the first sentient robot, but is also kind of like half robot because he's the son of one of the first mother, and you know, just kind of like a lot of lore dump. And it feels like it's one of those manga where it feels like the characters are just there not to have a personality, but to have a role into the story itself, into the plot. And that is kind of where a lot of these stories just loses me, because I really like good characters and not plot devices, and not just historic characters in this guy's the son of this person, wherever. And that's kind of all the manga does. It also has a lot of nudity, which is going to be, I think, a topic for a lot of these manga, because this year I've read a lot for a video, a lot of manga erotic stuff, and I've read for another video that I don't know when it's going to come out, a lot of like more disturbing manga for an iceberg video. This isn't really for any of those, but it's kind of like you're going to see a lot of like stuff like that. So this manga has a lot of nudity. There's a lot of like naked women in here, naked robots, I guess. But it kind of almost feels like it's doing that to distract you from the fact that it doesn't have anything else going for it, which really annoys me. And then the plot at the end, the plot twist at the end, like spoiler alert, but so the guy is the son of the guy who made the first computer, and he is the son of the first robot mother thingy. It's a thing in the manga. But then the girl that he's joined with, the robot, she is made by the dude that no, she's a reincarnation of her of the mother of the dude, and the dude is a reincarnation of the father of the girl. So they're kind of parents of each other, but also brothers. It's a very complex plot twist at the end that I guess it's supposed to be cool, but it's just like, so you're the brother and the father of the woman that you're having a relation with. Alright. And it's weird, but they don't take it as weird. I don't know, it's just a very boring manga. And if you like boobs, there's a lot of them in here, but that's all. Number 2, we got Utsukushi Inu, which is one of those that I read for the Disturbing Iceberg, and it's weird. It feels like it's trying to be an Oshimi manga in a lot of ways, if you don't know, like Flowers of Evil, Blood on the Tracks, but it's not good. Again, it does feel like it takes a lot of Oshimi, but the plot twist of this one, not really the plot twist, but the kind of like, this guy's in a relationship with a woman, or, you know, I think they're both in high school, but whatever. And then there's this dog thingy creature that is supposed to kind of represent his orniness. I think the dog is supposed to be a little bit metaphorical, except it isn't, because I'm pretty sure a lot of other people see it. But the dog is kind of like supposed to be this metaphorical representation of the orniness of the dude, which what it means is that this manga has a lot of bestiality involved. And not really for any good reason. Like, I'm okay with manga having like taboo topics if they just make it at the very minimum interesting, if they have something to say about them, which I don't think Utsukushi Inu does, or I feel like it wants to have something to say. Again, something about not really about bestiality, but about the ordiness of dudes. I'm pretty sure. I just don't think it has a really good execution, and it just ends up being extremely uncomfortable because there's a dude fingering a dog for like a chapter. I don't recommend it. Unless you're really, really weird. I don't recommend reading this. And on number 1, the bottom worst manga of the list. Yes, one that is worse than fingering a dog. Shouldn't say that. It's Nice Prison, because of course it is the worst weekly Shonen Jump manga, not only of the year, but also in my opinion of probably the decade so far. It is similar to Crash Bandicoot in the way that it feels. Again, it's a lot of like loud, unfunny jokes, one after another, after another, after another, and Nice Prison doesn't have characters to butcher in the sense that it does, like, it's not gonna grab existing characters and then ruin them, but the characters that it does have, they are not interesting as well, which is again, it's a common thing in a lot of these bottom of the lists manga. But yeah, I think for me the worst part about Nice Prison, it's not the unfunny jokes, which there are a lot, but to be fair, there are some jokes in Nice Prison that I did find funny. I laughed at maybe 4 times throughout the entire run, 2 volumes long. It's not a lot, but it is something. But the problem, I think, is for an absurdist kind of manga like Nice Prison is, nothing stays with you. It is so ridiculous, so out there, and yet nothing really feels memorable. Nothing really sticks with you. Like characters that are so outlandish, and you forget about them because they just happen, they just appear for one panel, then the next panel there's another random outlandish character, and then there's another random outlandish character, and then the main character, not the prison dude, which I forget the name, the supermodel prisoner, but the guard character, which is supposed to be the kind of like the main character of the manga, doesn't do anything. She does not do anything other than explaining jokes, which I do understand that it is something that happens a lot in gag manga. In Weekly Shonen Jump, it does. But at least in other manga, even like a Mori-King that does have a character that does explain a lot of the jokes, she does something. She is an active character, like Shugomaru that has the girl that is like Shugomaru's trying to defend with. They have a role. They do things. The actions in manga happen because of actions that they do. Even if not all, even if they are not the main character, they are actively there. They're actively present. This one, she is not. She is there to be kind of like a side character out there explaining to you the joke that you're supposed to get, but it's not funny. You get the joke, and it's just not funny. So, yeah, I'm probably going to rant a little bit more in the Rookies of the Year video with Trentin and Axel, so I'm going to stop here, but it is probably the worst manga I've read this year. It's not probably, it is the worst manga I've read this year. And with that, let's jump to something a little bit more positive. Let's talk about the top 15 manga that I've read in 2025. On number 15, this was an hard one to rank, I'm gonna be honest. But on number 15, we got School Ningyo, or School Mermaid, I think it is the English translation. This story sees a bunch of girls who, like, each one shot or each chapter is kind of like its own separate story about this overarching plot. But basically, there are mermaids, which are these girls that you see in the cover of the manga, roaming at school at night. They look like the girls from school wearing swimsuits, and they just kind of like swim through the walls and the sky and things like that. And each of them have a letter. The translation has a Roman alphabet letter, but I'm pretty sure even in the original, that's what they have. And says the legend, and as we find out throughout the manga, it is true that if you eat the flesh of a mermaid, if you go there at night and eat the flesh of a mermaid, that has the letter of the person that you like, the person will start liking you. So each chapter follows a girl that is trying to do just that. That is trying to go to school and essentially catch and eat a mermaid that has the letter of the person that they like. And over the course of the 2 volumes of this manga, that idea evolves and grows, and it is a little bit out there. It goes like the imagery of this manga at times it is fantastic. It is very surreal. It is very strange. Just have like a feeling unique to itself. Obviously, I do understand that I've had this song with Doofy that a lot of it is gonna be girls in swimsuits, and that may not leave you comfortable. But compared to a lot of other things that you can see in here, I don't think it's that bad. I'll just warn you, I don't think it's that bad. But yeah, I do enjoy how the plot moves. How even though it is 2 volumes of what seems to be mostly the same, right? It grows, and of course the mystery of who they are, why are these mermaids here, what they have in the school grows. We start learning new rules about these things. It's really fun, and I do recommend if you want something like short and surreal and interesting and different. School Ningyo is one that you should check out. The number 14 is one that I'm not sure if it counts, but I'm gonna put it anyway. It's Mission-chan no Daibokan. I'm pretty sure this was an online only manga from 2000 and like late 2000s, I think. It's different. The only thing I have to say about this manga is I don't feel like it explains the plot very well, but you kind of don't need to, because to be fair, it's kind of like a vibes only manga. Mission-chan, she is in this like purgatory hell after she died, where she finds out that death is just like living. She has a job, she has things to do. The entire manga is very surreal. It has this imagery, like a mix of traditional art with digital art. Every page, every panel looks different. It looks very unique. The coloring of it, it's a manga that really calls me like visually, because it is so different than anything that you're kind of used to from manga. And again, I'm not sure if you can consider this manga or not, but it's really great, and I recommend at least checking it out. On number 13, we got Ashura, or Asura, depends on who you ask, which is a George Oyakama manga from the 80s. At the time, this was considered to be very disturbing, and it was even banned in, I'm not sure if all of Japan, but I'm pretty sure certain prefectures it was banned, because it talks about cannibalism. So basically, Asura is about the story of a boy who was born, his mother was this really starving, sick woman that was like just, she had been left to the brink of insanity by the point he was born, so she tries to eat him. He survives, and then he has to live his life alone, finding food, and he himself starts eating other people. And then it kind of just follows his life. I think the first couple chapters are really the worst part in terms of the goriness of it, which is not even that gory, but in terms of the topics of it, the beginning and then the ending of it is kind of like the worst part. Because what happens is Asura kind of gets adopted into a group of, a dude and a bunch of kids. The dude's just kind of like using them to, literally farm food, and he's just like being kind of a dick to them. And then Asura is just bullied, and then he misbehaves and kind of starts beating people. Then everyone goes after Asura. But I do enjoy the story of Asura, the evolution of Asura as the character himself. He starts like this very animal-esque creature. He barely is even human. Obviously, he eats humans, and so that's kind of like the thing that they say, like, if you eat human meat, you're not human yourself. But you see the evolution of Asura. You see how he grows to be more human, to learn to talk, to learn to behave. Once he is able to have a family, to have someone who takes care of him, to have someone who teaches him. But the world of Asura is very cruel. Everyone is dying of hunger, and everyone is fighting for food. And so it quickly goes back to the status quo of just having to eat things to survive, and those things maybe just have to be other people. It's very brutal, but it's not just edgy and gory. I'll say this. The main thing in here is the evolution of Asura. The only thing that stops him from being a bit higher, I think, in my opinion, is the fact that the story kind of like abruptly ends. I was expecting a little bit more of a where the story does end. It does close a lot of the major plot points that were introduced at the beginning of the manga. However, a lot of things aren't really. It is kind of an open-ended manga that doesn't need to be open-ended, I don't feel. So that takes some element of it. But it still ranks number 13. On number 12, we got Gakko Gurashi, or School Life. I think a lot of people like this one. This was the first time I've read it, obviously. And this is a zombie manga about a bunch of girls, like 4 girls that live in the school where there's a zombie invasion outside, and it's kind of like a cute girls doing cute things for the beginning in this apocalyptic world. And it's really well done. I think the juxtaposition of, you know, these girls doing like school life, doing like planning, having fun, drawing jokes, like this in this very cute art style, and then the cruel world outside of like the zombies, the apocalypse. I think it is really well done how these two elements come together. Just because of that, I think it ranks on this list. Though I do have to say, like, the story is constantly moving, right? This is not one of those episodical static manga. Like, I feel like a lot of the others that I've mentioned, Mishun-chan and School Ningyu, have been. This is a full-on plot about these girls eventually moving out of the school, going into the world, meeting other people, these other people getting involved. And it's a really good story, I think, where we see the evolution of these characters, of these girls having to accept how the world is and still trying to find happiness, still trying to live, and a lot of times not being able to do that, you know, automatically, but having these help each other to become better. I do have to say, like, one of the most interesting things at the beginning is the main character that you see on the cover. She sees the world not as a zombie apocalypse. She sees the school kind of like normal, like she is like blocked herself, and that is a really cool thing that I don't like. You slowly start to dissipate, and if you are into the manga because of that, because you find that interesting, it's very quickly thrown away in favor of this character being a bit more active, being honestly a less annoying character than she is at the beginning of the story, and doing a lot more to help the other characters, which is really nice. But if you do like that, if you do like that aspect of the manga, even though there is bit of it that does come back later on, I'm not going to spoil it, but that aspect of the manga is thrown out pretty quickly. So just have that in mind. Number 11 is Brotherly no Basha, which is, again, really hard manga to rate. This is the first of the 3 manga from Manga Rising Staff that I have, or like on in a row. This is the heaviest manga I've read. Which is saying a lot, because this list is a lot of really heavy stuff this year. That's just kind of like the topic. But Brotherly no Basha, don't go read it, actually, unless you are able to extend some of its topics. So basically the idea of this manga is that there is a group of orphan, like, teen girls, like, not really, it's a house, like, for orphan people. I forgot. An orphanage. It's an orphanage. That's the word. Where there is this troop that adopts these girls to be part of the troupe, and like an all-women troupe, and participate in theater pieces. But what happens is that a lot of the girls that are adopted don't actually appear in the troupe, don't seem to actually be part of the troupe. So what happens to these other girls? Well, they are thrown into prisons to appease the prisoners, in that are able to do whatever they want with them. And I'm just gonna leave it at that in terms of descriptions. If you want the description, well, the first chapter does a really heavy job of showing you exactly what happens to these girls. And then never again, really. Like, the first chapter does that. It shows you exactly what happens, like, visually what happens. And then you kind of don't. Like, the things are either indirectly mentioned or not mentioned at all over the next couple of chapters. But because you know what happens, it makes everything else in the manga that could otherwise be seen as a completely different story. A lot of these chapters could feel like a completely different story on their own, but because you have the context of what happens to these girls, the story just feels incredibly heavy all the time. And I think it does a really good job at doing that, because it's not a case where, you know, they show you every single thing that happens is just like for shock factor. You may argue like that even that first chapter is for shock value, but the fact that they only show it once throughout the entire manga, I feel like it's basically saying like, this is what happens, that's enough. We don't need to keep showing you this. And still be able to have like this heavily tense manga, really tense manga, really dark manga. Just doing that, I think it's really well done. Rounding up number 10 is Lychee Ikari Club, the Iroguro masterpiece. Probably, I think, the most not the most well known, but I think the most well regarded Iroguro, at least one of them. And I can see why, because I think it's easily my favorite, and I've read a bunch of them, including Shoujo Tsubaki. This is basically the story of a bunch of boys who build a robot to kidnap a girl, and then there's kind of like this King Kong-esque kind of story where the girl and the robot kind of fall in love. The boys go insane, trying to get the girl and kill themselves. It's a bit heavy, a bit tongue-in-cheek as well a lot of times. I do have to say, I think like the beginning of the manga is kind of like the heaviest part, and kind of like the weirdest as well. I think the manga really feels like it starts on chapter 2, but it is interesting. I do love the dynamic between all of these characters, the club itself, the way that these characters, like the jealousy between them, like kind of evolve and build their downfall, and the interesting plot, like the plot of the robot and the girl is kind of interesting, even though it is weird. Girl and the robot, right? Like, how did they build? It's something that is never explained. Like, how did a bunch of like random middle school kids build a sentient robot? None of them seem to be real that smart, and no technology seems to exist that allows that. But it happens. But it is okay. We accept the events, and yeah, it just kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of the. It always reminds me a little bit of The Shining, the way that some stories kind of like evolve into like start slow and then get more and more chaotic as they go on. Maybe because it was the first story of that kind that I read. It does remind you a little bit of that. It starts crazy. It's right. It does start crazy, but the relationship of these characters sort of like very solid. They all like each other, and then just start like peeling the ways, and they start like turning against each other. And it is fun to see how it all evolves. So yeah, it gets number 10. Number 9 is Copernicus no Kyoku, or Copernicus Breath. And I gotta say, like, Copernicus, Lychee Ikari Club, Bradley Nobasha, they are all really close to each other. But Copernicus just kind of like wins. And this is I think a boys' love. I think it can be considered a boys' love manga that follows this clown of a circus that belongs to a circus where they sell their actors at night for more money because the circus isn't doing that all that well, and Copernicus is sold every night to a very rich man. Copernicus is also being used by the ringmaster of the circus, which gets very jealous, even though he's the one that it's telling him. And it is just kind of like this story of these characters dealing with kind of like being forced into this position of having to sell themselves for money, and also Copernicus' relationship with the man who, despite all of that, seems to really care about him. And even it also follows a mystery of the death of Copernicus' brother. But I think what really elevates this is the visual of it. The manga itself is so mesmerizing and it feels very dreamlike, very beautiful, very like surreal in the way that these pages are shown. Again, it's one of those like these three. Don't just jump into them. They're heavy, but this one I think is one that you should just at least look at it. I should be showing pages of these manga. On number 8, it's Kakuto Shoujo Densetsu Arukanaru Ringu, also known as Arukanaru Ring. This is a wrestling manga. I like wrestling. This one is fun. This follows a girl trying to join wrestling in the early 90s, Joshi wrestling in the early 90s, and kind of follows, I'm more used to WWE style wrestling. I've watched a little bit of New Japan, I watched a little bit of Stardom, but I'm still kind of like foreign to the world of Japanese pro wrestling, the way that it works. So the way that Arukanaru Ring works, like the wrestling of it works, is still a little bit foreign to me, but I still enjoyed it. It is a very different world, especially because, Joshi wrestling in the 90s. But I do enjoy like how it implements a lot of it. Like the author was, I think, interviewing a bunch of real Joshi wrestlers as research for this manga. And I like how the manga joins this idea of wrestling and kind of like makes it as if it was a legitimate sport. Which pro wrestling, if you do not know, it's predetermined, it's fake. It's fake. No, some people get mad at that, and I understand because of the way that people, think that fake means. They are still doing these moves. They are still hurting each other to some degree, to a lot of degree at times. There are still real life athletes that are able to do these things, but it is a story. They're building. They're doing like theater in some ways. Anyways, Arukanaru Ring uses that and shows wrestling as if it was real, which at the time, in the early 90s, I'm pretty sure, even though it was heavily suspected that it was fake, it was still shown and it was still treated as if it was real. Like, it wasn't public information that it was fake. It was just a conspiracy theory at the time. I do like how this manga is able to build on that, showing wrestling as real, but still having these elements of, like, for example, like the faces and the heels, which are the faces are the good guys, heels are the bad guys of wrestling, and having that and showing like how that could work in a world where wrestling is real, where you still have the good guys and the bad guys, and the main character actually joins the heels, the bad guys, and and like hangs out with them and trains with them, which is really fun. And also, if I remember correctly, there is a match where it is predetermined. Like, they are doing things that are like just to entertain the people out there, and it's like, I think there's a moment where just one of them just kind of like goes all out in one, is like, hey, sure, you won the match, but the way you won it is not interesting, and we're selling tickets. People are here to watch an interesting match. They want you to see, like, fight and try to win, But if you just go out there and just punch the person until they lose, that's not interesting. That's not fun. That's not a good wrestling match. So you have to spice it up. You have to do the high-flying moves. You have to do the spins. You have to, let your opponent tackle you a little bit. Like, the way that they are able to do this, showing, like, this is why, like, explaining the things that are more like, that's fake. Like, that shows wrestling is fake. And being able to turn that into still work in a world where wrestling is real, I think it's really well done. And again, I love wrestling, so this was a really fun manga. Seeing the characters throw suplexes and clotheslines and Frankensteiners, it's fun. Seeing them name actual wrestlers and matches that I went on researching, they're real matches that actually happened. I think that's awesome and cool and fun, and it deserves number 8 on the list. Number 7 is Flashpoint. This is an indie manga that was released in Portuguese this year, and it follows the assassination of Shinzo Abe. And this girl, on the cover, she is a TikTok dancer, and she does the dance in front of Shinzo Abe the moment he dies. And then it kind of like becomes a conspiracy that she's kind of like the reason. You know how when I think it was like Charlie Kirk died, then there was like people focusing on the guards like doing some weird movements. It's kind of what happens in Flashpoint. It's like Shinzo Abe just died. There's this girl doing weird things. She's the one, and we follow the backlash of like this conspiracy theory growing and growing. Like this random TikTok dancer girl being shown as like guilty of the assassination of the prime minister, even though they know who the guy with the gun was. It's really interesting. It's really fun, and I do like how the author is able to make this almost like an autobiographical manga, because the author himself is the guy filming the girl, and he is the husband of the girl's sister. Like that, the real dude with the same name as the author is in the manga actively doing it. It's kind of like half of the main duo, and it's dealing with real events that have happened. So the first half of the manga feels like this is an autobiographical manga of these two during the time of the assassination, and then of course the manga just goes insane at the second part in a really fun way. It's also really short. I think you can read in like 20-30 minutes. So yeah, go read it and support the author. He follows me on Twitter. I don't think he knows who I am, but he follows me on Twitter. I don't know why. Number 6 is Ipoji, or High Position. This is a manga about time traveling. I love manga about time traveling, things like This Neighborhood, things like Again, where these people go back to their old selves and are able to revisit their childhoods, or and a lot of these in this High Position included their high school years. I think it's really fun, and it's not just because I'm an old ass dude, because I thought this was really fun back when I was in high school. I used to love these manga. I think it was because I watched Time Machine. I think it was just The Time Machine is just the name of the movie. When I was a kid, I really loved it, and so the concept of these things, like Butterfly Effect as well. So the concept of these things is something I've always loved since I was a kid. So High Position follows the real old dude who is, he dies. He doesn't really die, but he gets caught in a fire while he was cheating on his wife, and then he wakes up in his high school years, and there's this girl that he really likes, that he used to like at the time, and he decides he wants to change his life, and he wants to go for her and be happy with her, because he clearly isn't happy with his wife. That's why he was cheating on her. What I think is really interesting about this manga is that he later on finds his wife in the school. Like, she was in the same school as him, like they grew up in the same school, but they didn't know each other at the time. They only met each other later on. And what this manga does is show him, like, this is kind of like why you used to, like, you married this woman. You just didn't marry a random woman. Like, there was a reason why you did it. That, like, there was love at the beginning, and he kind of like slowly discovers this by interacting with a younger version of his wife, who doesn't know him, right? She doesn't know him, that then starts learning and start like liking each other, but it's still like still trying to go for this girl, and so it's kind of like this love triangle between the dude, his wife, and like so the kind of like the status quo, I guess, and the old love that he still remembers from high school that never really followed through, that he doesn't know how she is, you know. Discover the whole love, like, again, of his relationship, his actual relationship. I think it's really beautiful. And something I really, you know, not expected to see. But yeah, that's kind of like why I really like it. The art is also really good. Yeah, it's a good manga. Number 6 is Miso Miso by the author of Ice Core Girl. I mean, this was the first manga I read from him. No, I think I read like a chapter of Ice Core Girl, and I wasn't expecting Miso Miso to be what it is, based on that. Because this is really heavy manga. It's about like this girl's bullied, like they move into a small town. Nobody likes her because she's an outsider, so they bullied her a lot. And the students, kind of by accident, but also they don't really care. They kind of end up burning her house down, and she doesn't die because she wasn't in the house at the time, but they end up burning her family alive. And the rest of the manga is a revenge story of this girl just going insane, and going after these students and the teacher. And yeah, it's heavy, it's gory, it's dramatic, but it's really, really good. I don't think I have a lot to say. I did rate this in like a couple of hours. I just kind of like started, I had to continue just like reading. But the thing is, and I feel like some of you probably relate to, when you read the manga like that fast, like you kind of are extremely engaged at the time, but then, you know, after like a month passes, it's what's so little that you don't retain too much of it. So there's a lot of this manga that I don't actually remember. I remember liking the story, like the characters of the girl, of the boy that she likes, is kind of like her only ally. The bullies who made me really, really mad, getting their, you know, having their revenge, having her revenge taken on them, which made me feel good, even though they're all kids. It is what it is. Let's move on to the top 5. Number 5 got Saison, or Life. This is a manga by the author of Kaiji. The artist is another dude, which I don't remember the name. That's why the art style is not the same as Kaiji, but it is the same writer. And even though the topic of life doesn't really fit with a lot of topics of his manga, at least the manga that I've read from him, which are a lot of like, you know, gambling manga, like Pachinko, Kaiji, just gambling. I know there's a lot of mahjong manga out there from him as well. Life, on the other hand, is about this dude whose sister died. His daughter died many years ago. They don't know what happened. They just found her body, buried, and then his wife died from cancer. Then he discovers he has the same cancer that his wife died from. That his wife had, that he has 6 months left to live, which just so happens to be the exact same amount that there is left to solve the case, until the case is like closed forever. And just when that is happening, he finds another clue about the death of his daughter. So he just goes on a journey to try to discover who did it, who killed her in the last 6 months before, you know, the case gets closed and he himself passes away. And through that, he discovers the meaning of life. It's really beautiful. But no, it's extremely intense in the way that I feel like only Fukumoto is able to do. Like, if you've read Kaiji, it just is one of the most intense manga I've ever read, and Life just is able to do that on a different kind of level, but still like heavily tense when you get to the final moments where it's like, there's only a couple of hours left before the case gets closed, and I need to solve this, and I need to show this, prove this thing to this guy, and I need to do this. And it's like, holy shit, you're just like, do it. Like, it's so intense, it's so nerve-wracking. And that's like one of the reasons why I really like his mangas, is just that, like, you get so involved into it. Obviously, this is one where I cannot talk too much about it, because the interesting thing about the manga is discovering the story, discovering the reason, discovering the criminal. But God, like, it is so good. For how short it is as well. I think this is like a 2-volume manga. It is really, really good and again, intense. So go check it out. But before, let's talk about my top 3. I missed somewhere on the counting. Misu Misu was 5, and Life was 4. You've seen the correct order. I fucked it up, but you've seen the correct order. Number 3 is Sachi no Mokushiroko, which I think is really, the English title is also really big, but it's Sachi's Records. I think it's kind of like the shorter format. It's a Shonen Jump plus canceled manga, and I normally don't rank canceled manga that high. Like, there's been definitely times where ranked mangas, canceled manga is ranked like below the top 10, but still on the top list. But never like something like number 5, like top 5, top 3. But this one, it deserves it, because it is easily the funniest manga I've ever read in my entire life. The concept of this is like, the girl in the middle, she's Sachi, and she was just chosen by God himself to be followed by a devil and an angel, which will both be ranking her behavior. So the devil will be counting points for every bad action that she does, and the angel is going to be counting points for every good action that she does. And at the end of the day, or not the day, but at the end of the time that they were given, they will tally the points, and if there's more bad things, humanity ends, and if it's more good things, humanity is saved. The rest of the manga is just the daily life of Sachi and her 2 followers, which quickly become like parents towards in some ways, and really good friends. And it's so adorable, and the characters are amazing. Obviously, Sachi is kind of like this rebellious little kid. She reminds me a lot of like Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes. That's the kind of character that she is. Then like the devil, or rather, that's... So the angel, she is extremely lazy. She's constantly like doing like bad things. She is ranking like good things that Sachi is doing, just like vaguely. Like, Sachi will do like a bad thing, and she's like, she talked nicely though, so one good point, like things like that. And then the devil is kind of like the reverse. Like, he is judging her like very strict, but he's being like a strict dad, like wanting her to correct the bad things that she's doing and becoming like this good person. Like, she's like helping her improve as a human being, even though he's supposed to be like a devil and is supposed to be like going for the end of humanity, as all devils want. And the relationship between all of these 3, the way that like they interact with each other, it's really funny. The manga itself has some of the best jokes. There are jokes are built like a punch. The entire chapter to build on, and there are like stupid stuff that are just like 2 panels, like the simplest thing ever. Like Sachi wearing an armor, like a bulletproof vest for taking the vaccine, and she's like, no one can touch me. It's like, boop. Like, things are just so simple in execution. There's like this bunch of jokes. I think there's only like 2, but they're really, really funny. About like how they're like this, and they're way like over a meter. And I don't know, man. Just if you want to laugh, if you want to have a good time, this is the one. Like, all of the manga in this list is really bad for your mental health. I'll just tell you that. Like, this year was really a lot of depressive stuff that I've read. I don't mind it. It was really good, but it was a lot of depressive. This is the light. This is the thing that was like, oh my god, this is so good. I love it so much. The ending reminded me a lot of Mago-chan, if you read Mago-chan, in which it comes abruptly, but he's able to do, like, to use that abrupt ending to the story and make it very heartfelt, make me want to punch whoever the editor-in-chief was in Jump. Plus, really, this deserved a lot better. But as it is, it's still such an amazing manga, one of the best manga I've read. And the other two that are above it are also some of the best manga I've read, but they are not funny. They're not funny. Number 2, we got one, or should I say Ichi, the Killer. Yeah, I'm sure you've probably heard of the movie. It is very often considered to be one of the most disturbing, gory movies of all time. I've never seen the movie. I kind of want to after reading the manga because the manga is really, really good. Also, really, really heavy, really, really gory. It follows Ichi. Actually, it doesn't follow Ichi as much as you'd think, but it does follow Ichi, which is a man hired by a group of people to assassinate famous people, yakuzas, things like the underworld people. That's his job. And what you quickly learn about Ichi is that he is weird. Like, he is constantly crying. He gets an erection while he's killing people. And he's like, he wants to be like such a nice dude. But there's something wrong with his brain. And then there's the other side of the coin, which I forgot his name, but is the main antagonist, is this Yakuza leader, or actually not a Yakuza leader, but like a member of the family of Yakuza, that the leader gets killed by Ichi, and he was like the son of that dude. Not physically the son, but like metaphorically the son. So he wants to get revenge on Ichi. And this dude is also really, really weird. He thrives on torturing people. He loves violence in a way that no other person does. And he's like kind of like this masochist. And so the manga then follows these two following each other, trying to kind of like Ichi just doing his job and eventually like going up to him and having to kill the other dude, and him trying to find Ichi. And we kind of follow him more than we do Ichi, because the main plot of it is like this Yakuza just going out and trying to find who Ichi is, where he lives, and there's like this tense atmosphere. It's kind of like almost like a reverse monster where the bad guy is after the good guy. It's really good. It's really violent. It's extremely violent. Like you have to be able to be okay with gigantic levels of blood and sex and just anything goes in the world of Ichi the Witch. Not the Witch. Ichi the Killer. It's not anything like Witchy the Witch, I can promise you that. But I can see how even just the movie itself got like a cult hit, because if it is anything as good as the manga, it's really good and it's really cool. But what is better than Ichi? What is better than Sachi? Well, it's our number 1, and that is Barefoot Gen. This is another manga that I might just go and do an entire video on, because I feel like I could talk about Barefoot Gen for like an hour long, which seems to be the runtime of this video already. Barefoot Gen, as you probably have heard of the movies, at least the first movie, is a manga about the bombing of Hiroshima. So Barefoot Gen is written by Keiji Nakazawa, and Keiji was a survivor of the bombing of Hiroshima. So Barefoot Gen is very much, in a lot of ways, autobiography. And actually there is this one shot called I Saw It, which is a full-on autobiography of the author, which was released a couple of years before the Barefoot Gen, which is kind of like a prequel, not really a prequel, but kind of like the one-shot version of it almost, where if you read that manga that is telling the exact events that happened in his life, and then you go read Barefoot Gen, there's so much, especially during the events of the bombing that just are exactly or almost exactly the same. The main difference between Barefoot Gen's description of the bombing and I Saw It's description of the bombing is that in I Saw It, he gets knocked off when the bomb hits, and he wakes up with most of his family dead. And in Barefoot Gen, he's able to survive, wake up, and he's able to still be in time of seeing his family die in front of his eyes, which is worse, but it's not that much different. The family still dies in the exact same way, and it's heavy. Like the manga, like legitimately, when I forget anything that I say about like evidence in these other manga, because it's very different with Barefoot Gen, because what this manga does is telling you exactly how things happen. It looks like you're reading this, and it looks like something out of like a fictional hell, like out of like a Hiroguro manga, like, you know, this kind of stuff. But he's not trying to do that. The author is not trying to do that. He's not trying to just throw you shock value. He's just describing the things that he saw with his own two eyes. The life that happened, the things that have happened, that are just so hellish, that are so hard to even imagine. That's real things that have happened in the real world, but they have. And that changes you. The reason why this is number one, easily, is because this is kind of like, you know, that question of like, was there ever any book that changed your life? I never had an answer for that, really, but now I do. It's this one. Adachi no Gen, Barefoot Gen has changed my life in the way that it shows how things have happened, and they just, oh my god, they like it changes the way you look at these kind of events. Because it's like your brain kind of like turns it off. Even currently, like the current events with Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine, like these wars, you kind of like, you are aware of them, yes, but you kind of have to turn it off. Like your brain kind of has to distance itself from it to even function. But Barefoot Gen forces you, grabs you and puts you in that place for a second, forces you to acknowledge like how horrible these things are. I think it is a very important manga for anyone to read. If not it, at least the movie. I haven't seen the movie to know how it compares, how faithful it is, but you should read. Like, this is the one manga out of all the manga in the world that I'm telling you, you need to read. I think especially nowadays, especially in the times being what they are, you need to read Barefoot Gen. I just want to mention that Barefoot Gen is not just about the bombing. Like, obviously that is one of the main topics, but the bombing itself and the immediate after effects of it is like a volume and a half out of the 10 volumes that represent the totality of Barefoot Gen. Not only that, but the first volume or so talks about the war, the months prior to the bombing itself, how poor all of them were at the time, and then most of the manga, like I think like about like 8 volumes of the manga actually follow the years and even decades following the bombing. And I think that it is important, because I think one of the messages from Barefoot Gen is not that the bombing was bad. Obviously it was, but it's not just about it. It's about the after effects of war. It's about how this affects people not just in a moment, but for years and years and years. There are people, like if you research, even the author himself died from cancer in the mid 2000s. So people were still dying of the bombing decades after the attack hit, and the effects of the war still were felt for that entire generations, for the multiple generations that lived through it, for the rest of their lives. It wasn't over in 5 years or 10 or 15, and I think Barefoot Gen does a really good job at showing that, at showing the victims of war as we go through them in their, not their entire life, but we do follow Barefoot Gen until like their, I think his early 20s, from 7-8 years old. So there's like a 15-year gap of that we follow of story that I think is, again, really, really important to digest and to try to understand like what it means. I also really like that Barefoot Gen isn't just a manga that is like, Japan good, America bad. I'm not American. I don't have like a say on that fight, but I do like the moment where they show like a corpse of an American soldier after the bombing, showing that, it doesn't really matter if he was Japanese or not, he still died with the bomb. I think that was one of the pages where it's kind of like, okay, I understand the message. It also blames a lot of Japan for its involvement in the war, for the brainwashing of the soldiers. At the end, Barefoot Gen is very much anti-war manga rather than a pro-Japan manga, and I think that is important to be able to, to be able to understand the manga. It's not just again, I'm not American, but I'm assuming like an American reading it can just feel like maybe attacked by it. That's not gonna be the case, I don't think. And this is one of the first mangas to be translated, fan translated at a time with the approval of the author, because what the author wanted the most is for people to read it, for people to understand it. And I think, again, it is the most important manga to read. More so than your Naruto's and your Dragon Balls, and as much as I love, I love manga and I love Shonen Jump and I love reading a good battle shonen. I love reading a good, fun, trashy horror. This is important on another level, where it's not just manga fans that I think should read. It's like, this is a story that should be experienced, it should be read to help understand and humanize these victims and be more compassionate, be more empathetic about these events, and change the way you think about them. I think it is important. And that is it. That's my entire list. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, a lot of dark, gory, violent stuff in this year. It's not like this every year, so if you want something a little bit different, you can check out my previous years. The lists of my previous years, all of those manga can still be read. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me in your comments what you think of the list and your personal favorite manga that you finished in 2025. And if you are still here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.